Okay, let's do this. Here's another video about AAA nodes. Now, before we proceed, for those of you who haven't used AAA nodes yet, first you have to download the zipped archive, unzip it, unpack it, put it anywhere on your computer, and then copy the path to it, like so, and then go inside Blender, edit, go to preferences, file path, and then you add the new path by clicking this plus icon. I already did that. Let's open assets, Blender assets, default. There's nothing to install. This is not an add-on. This is way simpler to use. So asset browser, and then you look for AAA nodes. As you can see here, I have all kinds of assets that we have published. These are for the terrain mixer. This is terrain mixer node tools, also amazing. We have AAA terrains, ready-to-use terrains, high quality, some clouds, amazing clouds, AAA material. You should also look into that. And today's topic is AAA nodes. And to be more precise, we have very specific nodes to talk about. So let's press Control space here. And let's make these larger. Now, I'm going to make a screenshot so you know what nodes are we going to cover today. So let's just press T to remove the tools, and let's make a screenshot of this, and I'll just frame those that we'll be covering today. So this is the first one, align to origin, then we have offset rotation, then we have point control. These first two are new, then we have another three that are new, and that's circular bender, curve deformer, and object twister. It's different from this one because for this one you need to have a curve that is a base for your object that you're building, and this works on any object. Same as these two. By the way, this curve deformer, I wouldn't be able to do it without some of the tips from Erindale. So, hi Erindale, thank you. Then we have the last one that we should cover here is this distributtomesh, and this is also just like point control. This was also here before, but I updated to make it even better and easier to use. So that's that. We can now we can now save this screenshot if we'll need it later on. So this is now saved. Now Control space. Now let's start right away. Let's do something with this. I'm gonna add a new window here. Let's go with the geometry nodes editor. Let's create a plane, and I'll call this AAA nodes. Create new geometry nodes modifier, and let's see now. I can delete this camera and light. We don't need it. The cube doesn't have to be visible here, and for this I can delete this input because we only need these geometry nodes set up here. And I'm gonna drag this cube, and for now I think that's good enough. I also create two materials. So let's create the first one. This one will be a bit bluish, like so, and call it blue, and the other one will be red. Okay, now we have this cube, and let's connect it here, and here it is, the cube. Now let's start with align to origin, and maybe we'll also combine these, we'll see later on. So align to origin, let's put it here, and let's set the material, and let's add that blue material here, material preview. Now we'll disable this enable alt origin. We'll uncheck this checkbox for now. So we have an object here. Now this is very simple to understand. You are aligning object to its origin, which is always here in the center of the world. So let's create another mesh. Now we can edit from here. So primitives, and let's say cone. This is a perfect one. Now we can preview it to see the scale. Okay, I'll make it a bit smaller. So bottom radius like this, and depth maybe like so. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this one here, like so. And then I'm going to use this one down here and you'll see why in a second. And I will set this material to blue. You can see the cube if we use with origin. So the cube now is the alternative origin geometry. If we wouldn't use the cube, we disable this, and if I enable this preview with origin, you would see this little red sphere, which is used to visualize the origin. So when you move these sliders, you would see this red sphere, and the geometry itself, the object itself, is aligning to its origin, which doesn't change the location. So instead of this sphere, what we can use is the alternative origin geometry. So we first have to enable it, then we plug it here, and this is the alternative geometry origin now. Now, if we do the same thing with this slider here, see what happens. This alternative origin geometry can actually be a design that you have already prepared. So, for example, a larger piece of a spaceship or a vehicle or a character, and then you have this new piece and you adjust it to this already finished design. That's one way of using it. You can adjust the X value. Now I can use the transform geometry. If I place it here, change the rotation on the x-axis like so. Now I can move this back to 0. Same thing, I can use any other geometry now. Instead of this cone, I can use the same cube. So I can plug it here. I can use the same material, make it blue. I can use this same or a new transform geometry node, and I can make it smaller and whatever I want. Of course, I can rotate it on its different axis, and that's how I would use this tool. Now, what you can also adjust here is you can use the Boolean operations. So, for example, you can do something like this, and then you can start designing your piece here. So, as before, you can adjust it on the y-axis. You can adjust it on x-axis. If you have added the transform geometry node, you can scale it a bit like so, all kinds of stuff. But I think we have another node that it's more useful for this sort of operations, and that's the offset rotation node. Let me drag it here. I will delete all this like so, and I'll try to speed this up a bit. Now, same, we can use this material, the blue one. And now we're doing something different. We can also visualize the origin. If I would move it on any of the axes, I would be able to see it. So let's move it on the x-axis first. See, there it is. Now we can also change the material. Let's use the red. And now you see this origin here. This might be a bit more useful for that scenario of adjusting design. But before we do some tests here, let's see how we can rotate. Now we have changed the position of the origin. So now if we rotate around y-axis, this is what happens. If we rotate around z-axis, this is what happens. And if we rotate around x-axis, this is what happens. So I think this is very useful if you would have a design ready to use and you want to add some elements. I think this is better way to do it than what we did previously with the align to origin. I don't mind deleting it because I have it always ready to use here. So if I would get this offset rotation one more time and plug this here and then plug this to geometry, I can do some fast cuts. Now I will use the same cube as alternative geometry, set the material to red and do some adjustments. Okay, transform geometry, scale it a bit like so, move it up a bit, move it back a bit of an angle here. Let's see what we got. Okay, so this is it. Now what you can do, you can just add another one. So you can do this. You can zero out everything, so nothing changes right from the start. And then we can use the new transform geometry 0. I will change the angle, and I already know that I want it to be even thinner, so make it 0.35, and then I can add it here. So now I see it. I will move it up a bit, so I still wanted to cut these. Okay, and then move it back a bit as well. So let's preview it. This is how it looks now. The cool thing with procedural modeling like this is that you can always change it on the fly. Change the angle of this to see, maybe I like this better. So let's try to do something else. Now we have these already set, so I can use another one and I'll place it here. I'll use this original cube and do this, enable it. Okay, then I have this part. So now this and this can be joined together into something like this. And if I would add another offset rotation here, I could just move the let's just move this origin a bit on the Z. Of course, we have to do it with the origin, so we have to do it like so. So let's move it on the Z. It's here, and let's move it to Y like so. Move it a bit more, and now I have it here. If I would rotate it now on the X-axis, this is what I could get. Not really fancy. Just want to show you that we can have some fun with the rotation around the axis, and we know exactly where the axis is. But what I want to do, I want to add additional piece of geometry, and that would be primitive cylinder. We'll just preview this cylinder for a second. Let's make it a bit deeper, radius a bit smaller. You already see where I'm going with this. Let's transform it right away. Let's rotate it around the y-axis 90, and let's use this as an alternative geometry for this piece. Delete this preview node. Now we're using this as an offset, and we'll move it down a bit. So now when we rotate it around x-axis, it will rotate around this position. So this is the way you use the offset rotation. I think I can do a lot more complex design than this. This is just to show you what is possible. That's related to the align to origin and offset rotation. Next, we're gonna cover point control. Let's duplicate this. First of all, I'm gonna make this as a fake user to keep it, and I'll call it, I don't know, weird box. And let me also rename this to weird box. Now I'm gonna make another object, and we'll call this one points, curve points. And we make this unique modifier points, and we can delete everything here, so we have a fresh start. If you remember, if you have used the point control, this is how it looks now. It looked a bit different before. For this you need the curve, and you need something to visualize the curve. Actually don't need it, but I just want to show you how we used to do it. Now we would plug the curve here. We would maybe get the profile curve, and then it could be a rectangle like so. So this is the curve. So we can change the rectangle width and depth or height. Anyway, this is how you would usually use the curve. We just play a bit with some values here. So for example, the start of the curve, the end of the curve, the middle of the curve, and so on. Sometimes you don't want to use curve in this way. You want to have something that might resemble pipes that have to be placed on a specific design, maybe on a building or something like that. And then you want to control the points. You know the exactly the number of points you want to have. And for this, we use this point control. I won't use this curve. I will use this curve straight. And then I might leave this and this down here. I will use this curve line. Now I'll plug it here to the point control. I'll change the color of it so we know that's the one. So, and then I'm going to plug it here. Okay, so now we have this line. We can also resample it because we need some points here. So let's say, I don't know, maybe 24 points. What you would used to do with this point control, you would select a few points from the start, that's down here, and then you would maybe select a few from the end, and then you would move it. So since this is the front view, I will only move it in the x-axis for now. So you would move it like so. This moves the whole selection, and if you would just want to move the start, you would go like this, or the end like this, and then you would have this mid-range offset. Right now it does move something because the range is from 0 to 1. If I would make this 6 and 4, from 4 to 6, now if I would move it, only this moves. Now the problem here was that it's very hard to work like this because you don't see these points. You kind of assume that they are somewhere here, and this is why now we have similar as in the previous examples with the align to origin and offset rotation. With point control, now we have this with points output, which allows you to preview the points. And you can also set the material for those points, like so, and you can scale them down a bit or make them bigger, scale them down. Now, if I would turn off the overlays and still see what is going on. So if I would offset it, the mid-range selection, I would exactly see what is going on here. So I think this is really, really handy, and it will allow you a lot more control when designing. So I can use this one here, add a bit of resolution. We can play with trim, and we can still move all this. Now we can also resample it, fill it a bit. Actually, we don't need to resample it here. My mistake. Okay, so we can also tilt. Let's make it a bit thicker. With more segments to the fillet. Profile rotation. Okay, the next one will be the distribute to mesh, and then we'll end with the circular bender, curve deformer, and object twister. So let's remind ourselves what distribute to mesh does and what are the new features. Let's duplicate this as we did before. Call this distribute mesh. Let's make this a unique modifier and fake user to mesh. Okay, and we can delete all this. Just check. Okay, the way this works is we can drag and drop it here. We need two meshes, so let's use we can use the cube, and this will be our base mesh socket, and then we can use the same cube for the instance. Just make it smaller a bit. For now, let's make this small, and we're gonna set material blue one, and for the instance we'll use the red one. Let's plug it here. Right away you can see what is different than what we had previously, and that is the fact that now by default it doesn't distribute on all the faces of the base mesh. It just distributes on the selected faces or the range. So here is where you set the range from 2, and you can move this all the way up to 1000, and you can even type more than 1000. And so if I would move this slider slowly all the way from 0 to 5, because the cube has 6 sides, so, and we start from the 0. And if we would go down one by one, see what happens. If we would subdivide the cube, let's show it. You see, we get more faces. So you see, we can subdivide it even more. Now, in this situation, I would probably make the instance even smaller, like so. Now you would change the range from 2. And of course, as in previous examples, we have also added this Boolean options. We can make a difference or union. Now they're the same geometry. Just to prove it to you, if you see this cube here, now if I would disable this, you see the whole cube, but when we enable union, you see the half of it. Now you might have noticed that you have to enable both to make this last one work. So I think I'll change that for the future updates, but for now it's the way it is. Okay, now let's move to the last these three, and I will make a new object. I will call this one new shapers, and I will make this a unique and fake users. Hide this, and I can delete all of it. The easiest way to present to this is to, just try to replicate what you see here. So let's just first add this circular bender, curve deformer, and object twister. I will change the colors. Let's color this one like so. Let's color this one like so, and let's color this one like so. Okay. So let's start with the circular bender. I'll add Suzanne to the scene, mesh monkey. Let's hide it, and let's drag and drop it here. And I'll also subdivide it, division surface, so we get it smooth. Times, and set material to that blue material. Like so, and we're gonna plug it here. And this we're gonna plug here. So this one is very simple, also very powerful, but I won't go too deep. Here you have factor. You can switch. If you would move it on the x-axis, you would get different kind of effect. Okay, circle scale, go all the way like so. Can rotate this around the origin, and you can also rotate this around the object axis, which gives some very interesting results. I already know what I will be using it for. I won't tell you right away because I plan to do another tutorial with this. Okay, now let's move to the next one. That's the curve deform. So for this one you can use, so you can add Bezier curve right here to the scene, or you can add the curve procedurally inside the geometry node setup. So let's start with this one. So let's add this curve here and plug it here. Here we go. Now if I would make it bigger like this, all transforms. Now you see what happens. So if I would want to play with the curve and move it around and so on, similar as in the previous example, you can rotate the object around the axis. You can affect how stretched it is. So you can do something like this. You can change the tilt value. So let's pronounce it a bit. So if you change the tilt value, you get something like a twister around the curve. You can inverse the tilt. You can also tilt all. So this is basically just rotating it around the curve, similar as this. Regarding the stretching, of course, you can also make a reverse stretch, so it kind of mirrors it. And that's it. I really like this one because it is the most powerful one between these three. And also I mentioned I can add a curve here as well. Where is it? Curve, primitives, Bezier segment. So same thing, I can plug it here, hide this one, so I can plug it here, and then since I don't see it, what I can do, I can use this preview tube, like so, and then I can, it's a little bit fat, I don't mind, I see it better, so do this, and I can move it, this end here, let's stretch it all the way, and let's move the end up a bit, let's move the middle section, so I would plug this here, I would see what's going on with this, it works, and then you can also add more segments to make it super smooth. Of course, this might kill your machine, but you have to test sometimes, right? Okay, and now let's play with this last one, and that's the object twister. So let's plug this here, and let's plug the monkey here. So right away, when you do the twist on the Z, you'll see that it just twists one side, and that's because we have this influence position. If we move it all the way here, then it twists the both sides. This influence position actually helps you mask out part of the object or the geometry in case you don't want it to affect everything. And of course you can also rotate it like so. So in this example it only affects the upper part of the monkey. I can play with the twist on the x-axis and twist on the y-axis as well. Of course you can combine all these shapers. So for example, if I would want to use the circular bender here, then I have two effects happening at the same time. And that's it. If you have any questions, you know where to reach us. Cheers.